Welcome to all the colleagues joining. Good afternoon. Just doing a sound check for you. You can make sure your sound is working. We're just admitting a lot of people into the meeting, but have a look at the sound is working perfectly. Thank you. I'll say a few words again in a few seconds time. All right, just a sound check again to everybody joining. Good seeing all the faces, just making sure that your sound is working. From now on, a lot of people will start joining us. We will start with the event in a few seconds' time, just admitting some more colleagues. Guys, good seeing all of you. We're still admitting more people to the event. Let's give it another minute or so, and we will start. There's many people coming in, so let's just give an opportunity to join.
Hi.
Hi, Roberto. Welcome. Admitting more colleagues to the event. You can see our exciting program for this afternoon. I'm going to give it another 60 seconds. Many people are joining. All right, I think for housekeeping's sake and so on, let's start with the event. My name is Harry from Naji from the Transport Forum. Fortunately, you won't see a lot of me this afternoon, so let me be quick. Just some housekeeping issues. Ladies and gents, we're doing this in a meeting scenario. In other words, you kindly need to mute yourselves during the event, and so you don't have too many background noises. Note this event is also live streamed to YouTube. We also going to make use of the chat room. You will see a chat room to the bottom of your screen where you're welcome to post questions, greet each other, do some networking there. But let's stay focused on the topic we are entertaining today. And we're proudly being hosted by Oracle today. And it's a Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport event. All right, so we're still admitting people. I would like to share with you, while we allowing people to join, the presentations you see here today, those that have been made available, will be uploaded to the Transport Forum website. You can take a picture of that web address, transportseek.com, and that website do have a downloads feature from where you can download your presentations. Actually, many presentations presented at this forum over the past almost 15 years. How it works is that you need to log in on that website, and I'm referring again to that website, transportseek.com. So you need to log in to the left of your screen. Should you not have an account yet, you click on sign up and you create your own sign up, your own login details. Then you log in. Once you've logged in, then you can go to events and to downloads. Once you've done that, you'll be able to get that simple little search engine. You can just type in the title or the person's surname or name or whatever and search, and it'll bring up all the presentations related to your search. Or you can go to category and you can select today's date, and it will bring up all the presentations made available for this event. So as simple as that, and we're looking forward to having this event with you. So without further ado, I would like to hand you over to our MC for today, Mr. Giovanni Abrams. Thank you, Giovanni.
Thank you, Harry. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our webinar, The Digital Supply Chain of the Future. It is our hope today that as attendees you leave with a few nuggets of wisdom which will either inspire action or change. We are extremely proud today and honored to mention that this is truly a worldwide event, in that we are hosting 34 countries. We have colleagues from countries such as the United States, Kenya, the United Kingdom, Uganda, and France, but to mention a few. Our registered audience in attendance is counted at over 300, from vice presidents to general managers. We would like to extend a special welcome to our global CLIT audience that has joined us today. The Institute would also like to thank our sponsor, Oracle, for making this event possible. Just a little bit about myself and how I fit into the Institute. My journey with the Institute has been a great learning experience, which has enabled me to interact and network with professionals across logistics, transport, as well as supply chain. CLIT SA focuses on providing people with tools, knowledge, and the network they need to thrive in today's competitive world. In saying that, the Institute has empowered me to build and position my brand in industry. In my search to make a difference and build future-fit leaders, the relationship started 3 years ago through the mentorship of a colleague who enrolled in the Women in Leadership course offered by CLTSA, which later led to many other opportunities, serving as the vice president to CLTSA Young Professionals, serving as an industry stakeholder on the TITA Chamber of Freight Handling, representing CLTSA, which ultimately culminated in the achievement and accolade of Accenture Rising Star 2020 winner in the category of transport, logistics, and security. So in future, please remember to follow us on all social media platforms as we are active on LinkedIn and Facebook, so that you do not miss any of our future events. Our program today will commence with a video show showcasing DP World, after which Baljeet Naji, SCM Strategy and Business Development Leader at Oracle, East Central Europe and Middle East Africa, will set the scene, following a keynote address from Mr. Mohammed Absa, Vice President, Enterprise Systems DP World. As attendees, as mentioned by Harry, you're welcome to post all your questions in the chat, which we will answer during our panel discussion. As we are aware that there are many attendees this afternoon, please be patient with us as we might not get to your question. We will now play this introductory video to showcase DP World, following which I will introduce the first speaker, Baljeet Naji. Thank you.
Do you know when trade is at its best? When it's so convenient, it almost feels invisible. It's when you never have to think about it. Trade is at its best when it makes getting something, no matter how big or small, from one place to another, feel like handing it over with your own hands. Making the world flow better. That is the DP World experience. A way to make another country feel like next door. To make a stranger feel like a neighbor. To change what's possible for everyone. From factory floor to shop door. And we make it happen thanks to thousands of great partners to advance technology in service of the greater good. To a clear understanding of the challenges we face as an industry and as a planet. For us, trade isn't about running ports. It's about opening portals. Portals to millions of people, but also to a better future.
Please allow me to introduce our first speaker, Baljeet Naji. Baljeet is the SCM Strategy and Business Development Leader at Oracle for East Central Europe and Middle East Africa. She has over 20 years experience in the IT industry and the ERP domain. She has joined Oracle in 1997 and has worked across various regions. Baljeet and her team are responsible for driving SCM growth, across East Central Africa and Middle East Africa in application sales. She holds a BSS honors in biology and is also an accountant. Prior to joining Oracle, she was a financial controller of blue chip companies in the UK. Baljeet supports various charities, raised funds for children's charities through climbing Kilimanjaro in 2006, and a 3 hours non-stop spinning class, and worked with charities to prepare annual financial statements. Finally, Baljeet is Oracle Women in Leadership leader in the Gulf. Welcome, Baljeet, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Chigari. That was very powerful. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. I think, wow, the audience are from across the globe. So welcome to this such exciting topic of the day, digital supply chains of the future. Well, over the last 2 years, I would like to call it the era of the pandemic. We have seen such disruptions in our personal lives, with organizations, in customers, and more so in supply chains. Supply chains have been disrupted to the heights. I mean, to an extent where people really kind of now know what supply chains are all about. Because prior to this, there were not many people kind of really understood what supply chain was. But I think the pandemic has really raised the bar for supply chains. And it is really a wake-up call for our organizations and our customers to really not sit and do nothing and just have this lights on. It's all about making that change. It's all about changing their business platforms, which are so inflexible, rigid. And really, you've seen what's happened and experienced in this pandemic. So it's all about, in the last 2 years, what we have been saying is, how do we drive that digital transformation, whether it's supply chain or other transformation, but in terms of more so in supply chain because of the disruptions that we have faced in our lives, in logistics, etc. So it's really about changing that business platform to a modern business platform. The modern business platforms, which will give you the agility, flexibility, mobility, governance, and real-time information to drive that digital transformation, really, which is so much needed. And also being able to embrace the latest and the greatest of technologies, which has been thrown at us all the time. The blockchains, the machine learnings, etc. And in order to do this, it's really paving the way to the cloud. It is really the cloud technology, which will enable you to give that flexibility of the business platforms, drive that in the digital transformations that we're talking about. So when we look at today's topic, which is digital supply chains of future, what do we mean by this? The word is future. We talked about, building the resilience, which we all talked about the last 2 years, driving that end-to-end visibility. But it's the future. What is it the companies now to think about when they're coming out of this era of the pandemic? Now that you're on this supply chain journey of digital transformations, supply chains are very complex. There's oodles of data lying around, structured or unstructured data. Well, it's okay driving this transformation, but data is powerful. What shall I do with that data? I need to make sure I analyze that data. I make sure that I analyze the data to my benefit, whether it's from source, plan, to make, to deliver. I need to make sure that I have the insights. What's going on in my business? Do I have the visibility to fix it before something goes wrong? Do I have the planning in place? Do I have the right tools in place? What if something goes wrong? Look what happened to the Suez Canal. The vehicle blocked the canal and the whole logistic went topsy-turvy. Do I have that analytics to make sure that if something happens of that kind, does my data give me that information? So this is really what we call about is the supply chains of the future. So with that, what I'd like to share with you is what does Oracle give you in terms of this transformation of the journey of transformation. So when we look at, so Oracle gives you this one platform to help customers drive the digital transformation. We call them SaaS or cloud applications, which is really underpinned by the Gen 2 cloud infrastructure. Whether these applications are supply chain applications, finance, HCM, CX, etc., all of these applications are knitted, integrated together, and they are really applications being built bottom up. They're new applications. They've got the embedded emerging technologies, the blockchains, the machine learnings, all of that is artificial intelligence. It's embedded, the dashboards. What is it that Baljeet needs to do? It's all there in the dashboards. And furthermore, these applications are really underpinned by a very powerful, best technology platform, which really gives you the security, the performance, the governance, the tools that you really need to drive the digital transformation. And with our cloud applications, they're really always, we're on the innovative edge, quarterly releases. And most importantly, the platform is extensible. Now, we all have been the era of traditional applications where customizations used to become elephants in the room, and we were not able to innovate. But with the cloud infrastructure that Oracle gives you, the platform and the applications, they're extendable, which means we give you the tools to integrate with other solutions in your organizations, and also the tools to dissect, the data, what if scenarios that you really need to drive, so-called the supply chains of the future. So with that said, it is really time for me to introduce Mr. Afsar. Mr. Afsar is the VP of Enterprise Systems at DP World. Mr. Afsar is a very passionate leader. He's responsible for driving large multi-billion-dollar projects at DP World. And in knowing Mr. Afsar, Mr. Afsar is also a great mentor. He really mentors his workforce, and this is really very, very powerful and a great characteristic to have. So with that said, what I'm going to ask Mr. Afsar is to kind of talk to us and really tell us what is that how DP World is driving that digital innovation from a factory floor to the customer doors, leveraging Oracle technology, and also integration with the DP World, because I know DP World have got numerous other systems, that integration to share with us that end-to-end visibility and the governance that DP World is, kind of really giving the customers whose mindsets are changing on a daily basis. How does DP World address those changing minds of the customer? So, Mr. Afsar, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Baljeet. Thank you very much. And I'm really happy here and honored to be here as part of this session. And I think DP World, as you all may be aware, but what DP World, you might have seen the video, that DP World was previously a port operator, and our main business was handling the containers. And recently, from past 2 years, our business model has changed from port operator to the end-to-end service provider, as Baljeet said, from factory floor, from the customer to the last mile of the delivery. And DP World, we have operations in 64 countries in 181 businesses. And I would like to share with you some of the learnings, what I have done and what I have learned from some of the leaders in this industry. And the DP world went through major transformation, not only from the implementation of supply chain, but as such, the complete business model of the DP world changed. And I would like to share with you some of the lessons learned and what are the best practices that we implemented and how you can take the benefit of the mistakes that as a project we encountered and we learned from them, some of the challenges. So I would like to share with you all in terms of those best practices and lessons learned and challenges that we came across. And as you all know that we started this journey around 2 years back, and we have been looking out for the transformation. It is not just the technical implementation of the system, rather it is a complete transformation of the business. And it includes the business strategy, it includes various dimensions. So Baljeet, if you don't mind, could you please load the presentation that would give some perspective to the people?
Sure. Catherine, you want to do that, please?
Yeah. So during this journey of the implementation of various systems in DP world, as you know, the DP world grew inorganically by mergers and acquisitions, and it has to be very different and very agile and very flexible to accommodate a lot of various business dimensions. And we opted for a lot of tools when we analyzed it. And within the DP world, we found around 160 plus ERP systems. And if you know the difficulties you will encounter when you have so many different systems running across, and you can also identify the difficulties in collating the data and reporting all those different challenges, because all are disconnected entities running across the world, because we were the port operator. So there was not a requirement for one port to speak to another port. But now when the business model is changing, that when we are becoming the end-to-end service provider, then the whole ball game changes. The whole way we work changes. The way we see things changes. Shall you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so you might all know in terms of the traditional supply chain models, what kind of difficulties you encounter. It is all a linear communication. In the linear communication, you have requests being placed from one service provider to another service provider, and then it comes across a lot of challenges and inefficiencies built into the supply chain model. And in today's world, when some celebrity is taking a snapshot or seeing something in Instagram and posting it on the handbag, and you get a lot of huge demand on that particular handbag, and if you're not able to fulfill that if by the traditional model, then it will be very, very challenging and to fulfill that particular demand, because by the time we are able to service the particular customer, it takes the whole model changes. And just I would like to share with you some analysis that we recently did along with some of other partners, that to understand what is the time duration it takes from the last raw material to the end product to the customer. And you must be really surprised that it takes around 354 days for the raw material to the end product in customer's hand. So the model what we have now on the traditional model is not at all going to work. And if you have to tackle the challenges of the future, then you have to build the supply chain model in such a way that your supply chain are covering all the different business exceptions. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, so when we started this digital supply chain, so just want to understand and let you also feel what exactly I mean by digital supply chain. And basically, to be building something for the future, it has to be a connected network. So entities cannot alone function, and it cannot have the information within the system they have to build a network of trucks, network of ports, network of ships, network of everything you see. So either you use the modern tools, modern technologies for IoT, you use machine learning, what not you want to use, you have to connect and bring the visibility of the end-to-end product, so that the information in one network is being shared by with the other network. So you have to build the networks, and these networks has to be connected. And then you have to find the ways to automate everything. So you cannot have a manual system, where you are relying on manual activity when you are trying to automate or trying to build something for the future. So these are some of the fundamental things that we took in DP world in terms of trying to build something for the future. So nobody knows what the future is, but we can build some systems which can manage multiple exceptions. So number one is to have the connected network. Number two is to automate. And number three is to analyze everything. Everything means everything. You need to have the tools in place which can bring the data. Now, data is the new gold mine. So you have to have the analysis from every part of the world and every system that you are able to bring the value out of it, so that the exceptions can be managed. Then people can take corrective actions as soon as it is there, and it is proactively informing, taking predictive analysis, doing whatever you have suggested in you can see in a lot of technical jargons like machine learning and blockchain, whatnot. But at the end of the day, it is about data. And if the data is not going right, and if data is not being analyzed, then we will have great difficulty. So there are three fundamental things. One is on creating the networks. Second is to automate everything. Number three is to analyze, have the ability in place within the organization which can enable you to make the data, which can make you analyze the systems. Can we go to the next slide? So when we are trying to build the different digital networks and to enable the analysis, we have to identify what all the wastages happens in the supply chain. One thing is we have to understand what we are trying to build. At the same time, we have to understand what are the wastages which are there existing in the current organizations. And whatever systems you have, and what we have seen from different businesses and different entities and where we have been working is the mechanism of capturing the data. Even though you may have very beautiful systems, if the mechanism to capture the data and to manage the data is not good, then you will not have a proper system. So it is very important to have the data capturing functions in a right manner so that human interventions are eliminated. Number two is not about introducing the system in silos. As I was talking in the previous slide about building the network, you have to provide end-to-end solution. It is not about creating the silos of projects or silos of processes. It has to be a connected processes. And the third thing what we have noticed is, even though you may have a lot of systems, robots, then we don't want to introduce the physical human execution. For to give you an example, if you may have a warehouse, and warehouse management system will provide the best location, will provide the pick and deliver, it will provide all the required functions. But at the end of the day, if the behavior on ground is relying on the human activities or making the machine to work on physical execution, then you are building the weak process. So eliminate physical activities. There is basically having a gut feel in terms of this is how I have been doing the work and this is what I think is going to work. We have to have that kind of mindset change and to focus on the data and the system to provide that intelligence based upon the predictive model based upon the analysis that comes up with the system. So these are some of the 3 areas that I want to share with you, that what we have seen that is becoming a digital waste in our building the network for the future. Go to the next slide, please. Could you please go to the next slide, please? So when we are building an organization for the future, basically building, it is not just introducing any technical system. It is not just introducing any system. It is about people. It is about the culture. As the leader of this organization, we go by the fundamentals of 3 C's. One is to start with the culture. Second one is to go with the competency of the people that you are taking in. Number 3 is the capacity to execute that particular organization. So as a leader, we have to make sure that 3 C's are covered. If you have a difficulty in covering these 3 C's, then whatever systems you build will not be able to support it. As I mentioned in the previous slide regarding the wastage, digital wastage, one, the processes and the work systems, we have to see the end-to-end process. We have to solve the end-to-end problem, that we don't want to leave a problem halfway saying somebody else is going to solve it. So when we are designing the system, when we are designing the processes, we have to take care of the end-to-end processes. Go to the next point, please. And then it comes the technology part. So it is very, very important to have the right tools, right technology for you, so that it can automate all the activities of the supply chain and the information analysis, all the difficult aspects. If we are relying on human being to do that activity in these modern supply chain complexities, we will definitely fail. And it is very important that you have a right technology partner who can scale with your business. And can we go to the next point, please? And the most important thing is, in spite of having all the things in place, and the very paramount thing which DP World provided focus is on the data, whether it is a master data or a transactional data. The data in, you might have all heard, data garbage in, garbage out. So it has to be very important that we need to have the right data in place. So let me share with you one use case that we implemented in Peru. And we have been having the situations, and in terms of implementing manual, a lot of manual processes exist in the organization. And by introducing, going back to the previous 4 points which I have mentioned, taking care of all those dimensions, and we implemented the supply chain solutions, then we could able to make huge transformation in the organization, the business scales. Then technology is not a constraint anymore. So wherever we go for any transformation or any other activities, then always we hear that it is a technology. So now, with the tools what we have with us, we can confidently tell that technology is not a constraint anymore. Technology can scale and match the business demand. So coming back to this particular point here, on the key areas to address in doing the transformation is, first is to understand the strategy of the organization. And like as I mentioned before, DP World was a port operator. Now from port operator, we have transformed ourselves to connected, enabling supply chain, enabling end-to-end services. Then it is very important for us to understand the complete supply chain and understand the dimensions of various parties involved. So it is very paramount that before we enable any of the supply chain transformation, the team has to understand, align with the senior management on the enterprise strategy, and then the supply chain objectives. There are multiple objectives in terms of cost and visibility and transparency. There are different agility, there are different objectives associated with the supply chain. So as a supply chain transformation specialist, you must understand that what are all the top 3 fundamental things that must have that you want to target on the supply chain objectives. And the last but not least, and I was reading one recent article, then 50% of the transformation projects fail, not because of the senior leadership, not because of the objectives not being set, it is because of improper prioritization of the projects. So it is very important for the leaders here to understand the roadmap, what exactly is the roadmap that we are trying to tackle, and what are all the prioritizations of the projects. So when you try to solve a problem, that could be hundreds of problems, but you have to tackle the top 20% of the problems that can bring 80% of the benefit. So it is very important to understand the dimensions, it's very important to understand the roadmap and prioritize the projects, and it is very important. Next slide, please. So when we are starting this project for the transformation, we are building something for the future. So to build something for the future, your system has to be very flexible to accommodate multiple different scenarios. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, we are building something for the future, not responding to the current problems. Sometimes it is very easy for the project team to just get stuck with the current problems. So we have to go out from the existing current challenges and to have a different dimensions of looking for the future. That's what we did. We called the project Future. So that's the project that we executed in doing the transformation. And in terms of the business response, so when you have the exceptions, you are not only building the systems on technical perspective or a technology perspective, how to manage the exception. Rather, you need to have a business response for managing the exceptions. So when you are designing a system, you have to take care of the business response, not just a technology response. If you forget the business response, then you will be building something which is irrelevant in the organization. And going back to the strategy of the organization, whether you want to lead by innovation or whether you want to lead in services, you want to lead by cost optimization, you have to understand the objectives that you are trying to achieve. And then you have to be very clear and understand your value proposition of the company, and then build the model which can sustain the current and the future problems and future challenges. Can we go to the next slide? And in order to achieve some of the technical challenges, and as you know that we have implemented Oracle transportation system to manage our contract logistics services, and also to manage some of our own trucks and things like that. So we have a beautiful system which is integrated with all our back office systems. So we use Oracle transportation for our services. Can we go to the next slide? And for the warehouse management, we use the Oracle warehouse management for our various entities. The reason why we chose Oracle transportation and Oracle warehouse management is because it is a great product. It has all the functions required for us, and it is easy to build something, but it is already commoditized. There is no point in building the systems which is already commoditized. So the functions what is required for us to match both in terms of the transportation as well as from the warehouse functions, and then it was available for us. And we have been using, as I mentioned, 160 plus different ERPs. So we consolidated all different systems into one single Oracle Fusion, single instance. So we have all the back office functions integrated with the front office operation systems. So that's how we were able to manage some of our transformational activities. Can we go to the next slide? And as I mentioned previously, that for the DP world, it was a major transformational journey from the business perspective, and from being a port operator to complete changing into an end-to-end logistics service provider. So it requires different mindset, it requires different tools, and it requires different competencies. So we were able to capitalize on all the three areas what I have mentioned to do the successful transformation. And we provide, it is not just only providing the efficiencies within the organization, all the transformation what we are doing is doing it for the customer. So customer must be in the center of the transformation, and we are trying to bring benefit to the customer. So we never forget the customer while doing the transformation. So the customer input, there are multiple ways in which we understand and the customer's requirements. There are different channels are available to know the customer feedback and to understand different dimensions. And also you might also seen different advanced tools available for us in terms of advanced forecasting, predictive analysis, and predictive shipping. Amazon has a patent for predictive shipping. You ship before the customer is requesting. So there are some of the nice tools what is required to manage our systems. We enable those things for us, and to be having the flexible system and to have the performance management of all the things, having the KPIs, having the different scenarios are covered in the systems as well. And DP World also introduced its own products, a lot of products within the DP World to manage its own operational needs. And if you see from end customer, from a farmer to the shop floor, there are around 100 plus parties involved, and 100 plus documentations are being shared across different partners. So we have introduced our own tools and digital tools to do some of these transformations. So mainly for the back office, we used Oracle Fusion for finance, HR, procurement, and for the transportation, we use Oracle Transportation, and for warehouse management, we use WMS. And go to the next slide, please. And not only in terms of enabling the system, but also to future forward looking and the innovations that what DP World did for future. And we cannot just rely on the old technology, old tools. We have to come up with something new and innovative things for the future. So DP World has done heavy investment in terms of box bay. So it is basically a vertical container stacking. So it can go up to 15 high, and then it can be like you can avoid a lot of unnecessary shuffles. So in supply chain, inside the port, 50% to 60% of the cost goes on unwanted shuffling of the containers. The premises of stacking the container is depend on the human resource. If the planner is not planning well, then there will be huge cost in terms of shuffling the containers. So we have great technology with us. We have Cargo Stars Plus, which has a lot of intelligence built into it, which can transform the way we stack the container. And also we have Box Bay, which is a vertical container stacking that uses innovative technologies to stack it where there is a land constraint. The second one is the digital platform that DP World introduced is on the sea rates and digital freight alliance. So it is about network. We have to build a network. Without the network, the future supply chain, you will have difficulties. So DP World built its own network, Digital Freight Alliance, where we try to bring all different freight forwarders around the world to be part of the network. And then DP World also introduced the e-commerce, B2B e-commerce. So you have to generate the cargo and also enable trade for the developing countries. And there is a lot of great products in Africa, and you have a lot of coffee beans in different part of the world in Africa. And taking those coffee beans and taking the artwork, taking the pottery work from Egypt, putting it on the portal for Dubai.com, where people can open up for the different parts of the world for the people to get these particular items and for the people to make these particular products available for them. So we have also introduced Dubai.com, And then we have port community system, cargoes for the people to collaborate and communicate with DP World. So these are some of the digital products which we have introduced as part of our digital journey. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, thank you very much. We have reached the last slide, and Baljeet, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Afsar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Afsar, for your presentation. So, ladies and gents, now we will host a panel discussion and answer some questions. As I can see, there have been 3 different questions, 4 that have been submitted for answering, and we'll now go through that. So the first question, Mr. Afsar, for yourself and Borjiti, Naji, what are the differentiators in the supply chain that you are seeing that makes a company qualified to be described as having a supply chain of the future?
Could you please repeat your question? Because the message was not clear.
Most certainly. What are the key differentiators in the supply chain that you are seeing that make a company qualified to be described as having a supply chain of the future?
As I mentioned, for being future ready for any organization, whoever is using the traditional model, there will be a disruption. So by having the old technology, by having the linear model of responding to the customer demands, and it will not work. For the community, for the companies to be future ready, then we need to be ready in terms of responding to the customer needs. How quickly we can able to respond to the customers, how effectively we can respond to the customers, how agile, how flexible we are in terms of responding to the customers. So these are the dimensions, which is, as Baljeet, when she was talking in the initial points, the dimensions required for the future model. So all those dimensions must be there in place for the company to survive in the future. So if the companies are not ready in terms of having their supply chain, which is connected network, which has the ability to analyze the data, which has the end-to-end processes connected and automated, then you will not survive. So to survive, these are the sacrosanct preconditions you need to have. I hope I've answered the question.
Thank you, Mr. Afsar. We take our next question from Francois Veldeman. Thank you very much, Francois, for posting there in our chat. His question is as follows. End-to-end services require data from supplier, producer, distributor, retailer, and customer to be connected without any human intervention, while securing data integrity. Way forward. Is such objective a feasible one or only a dream?
No, it is feasible. Thanks, Francis, for asking this beautiful question. And definitely it is possible. Companies, those who have these, what just Francis written in question, the question has an answer itself. So it is beautiful. I think Francis has this question to convey a point. I think, yes, it is possible. And companies, those who are not able to do that, they will not be able to survive. And it is very important to get connected with the different, that's exactly the point of connecting and creating the networks and creating and connecting the parties. So that, as I gave an example, if somebody is pasting an Instagram picture that there is a nice handbag, and if the supplier is not connected, and by the time the supplier gives the raw material, the fashion is outdated. So you need to get the information from the media sources. The input, the data collection point has to happen from the different sources. Customer demand has to be analyzed. At the same time, all the different parties who are part of this network must get connected. That is must for you to survive, for you to have an efficient supply chain. There are multiple ways to connect, but one of the ways, the important ways, what we know now is IoT. And IoT,
and if I may add on to that one, is what Mr. Afsar so beautifully made the point is that in order to enable that, it's really what we said is to embark on those digital transformation. Because if you don't have that modern business platform that we talked about, the cloud and the emerging technologies, you can't achieve that, and security and governance is part of that.
Thank you to you both. I think an additional question from one of our attendees. What are the two areas, which additional two areas should digital transformation in the supply chain focus on as part of digital acceleration?
So to answer this question, it is, it is, as I mentioned, the whole supply chain, whole process, we have to look at the whole process. We cannot start, because each organization is different, each situation is different. So one solution is not going to fit all. My solution is not going to work in your organization. So what I'm asking is not to see the problem in silos. You have to see the end-to-end picture of your supply chain, of your organization, and then come up with the problem statement that is going to be providing 80% of the solution, or 80% of the problems are being covered. So you have to understand what is your pain, what problem you are trying to resolve, what is the strategy of your organization, what is the strategy of your supply chain. That will give you the answer. My answer will not fit in your organization.
But Mr. Afsar, I think you mentioned that very clearly in your presentation. The two, what if I remember from the top of my head, I think there was beautifully laid out points that you mentioned in terms of the points that you talked about. And one of the things that really resonated with me is people, right? If you don't have people, you can't drive the transformation. So people's fundamentally right. And I think the other point that you also mentioned in your presentation was aligning the strategies, right? It's so important. And the last point, if I remember, you also mentioned was the technology, right? So all of these things have to really be there to qualify. These are the points that you really need to have to drive the transformation. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Baljeet. So just to attach onto your comments, if we speak around automation, we have certain comments in the chat that speaks to automation requiring scale with robust and reliable decision-making systems. Is there anyone that would care to offer an answer on how challenging it is to audit and benchmark these systems to ensure that they are still providing good operational decisions as the supply chain environment evolves?
That is a very good question. I think I will give you two examples for this particular scenario in the optimization perspective. And the benchmarking is a very difficult question, as well as it is very difficult to benchmark. To benchmark the data, you need to have the historical data of your organization, because my benchmarking will not work for you. So the way I have been stacking my containers is different the way you have been stacking the containers in your location. The way I have been optimizing my systems, the way I have been deploying my trucks, the way I have been deploying my resources are totally different from your organization. The benchmarking will be specific to your organization, number one. Number two is we achieved great, if you are able to achieve the optimization in terms of predictive analysis, modeling in terms of stacking your containers, or also in terms of assigning their trucks based upon the demand. It brings a lot of benefit. And Oracle transportation system has this specific model for assigning the trucks and assigning the resources, which can do this exact work what you just asked. And we did implemented this particular system in Peru. And to tell you that we achieved around 100% optimization, double. So it is business to business is different, country to country is different. So I cannot say that what works in one country is going to work in another country, because the parameters are different. But the tools required for you to start is there. It is up to you to fine tune it. It is not that one time you do it and it is there. It is a continuous improvement process. You refine and you refine and you refine.
Thank you, Mr. Afsar. So I think, Baljeet, with you working with many suppliers in industry, are you or Mr. Absa able to share with us, in your view, looking at the industry and globally, how far do you think companies are to tapping into the vast amount of data that is available to them now to be able to sort that into actionable intelligence?
Brilliant question. Well, actually, the companies are quite far behind, to be honest with you. There's a research that's done by IDC in the Middle East, and they're saying that 62% of the companies are finding this very challenging. They've got this poor data quality, analytic tools, and it's still quite a challenge. And as I alluded on to, the fact is that, to get to the future supply chains, it's really and Mr. Afsar also alluded on to that, is really the data. Well, whether it's structured or unstructured data and whatever data we call it, companies are quite far behind in getting to make sure that they have the right tools to do the proper analysis that they need to do. So I think the message here should be that those organizations have embarked on a journey of transformation, coming out this era of this pandemic, and they're on that journey to get to the future, which is what we're talking about now. The tools are there, and I need to, because otherwise, what's the point of collecting that data if you don't have the slicing, the dicing of the information that you need? So they are behind, and I think they need to make sure that they get those tools. And these tools, what we're talking about is also stuff I alluded on to, is the IoTs, the machine learnings, etc. What if scenarios that needs to be done to analyze that the data that they have collected, and they will keep collecting. So that's what, far behind yet.
Thank you for that, Baljeet. Mr. Absa, final question to yourself from the chat here. Are you able to share with us as an audience, what are the key factors for the DF Alliance? How does the Alliance compare to and look at other similar alliances and global trade and logistics platforms?
Thank you very much for asking question on a Digital Freight Alliance. And a Digital Freight Alliance, we started around 1.5 years back. It is basically a part of a network of all the freight forwarders. The DP World tried to encourage them, because we are here to generate business. We are here to enable trade between countries. And we have various products. We have World Logistics Passport, which enable different countries to do the trade. And as part of that, we also have a Digital Freight Alliance, whereby we have a portal called C-Rates, where we generate leads for the freight forwarders to perform. If anyone wants to be a part of the Digital Freight Alliance, then they can, of course, be part of the Digital Freight Alliance. Then whenever there is a lead, say, for example, somebody is trying to ship a container from Nepal to Ivory Coast. And if somebody wants, there is a digital request is coming in that I want to move 10 boxes or 5 boxes from Nepal to Ivory Coast, then if there is a Digital Freight Alliance is there, and if the agent who is already registered in Nepal, who is part of this network, then the lead will go to that particular agent in Nepal, and one request will go to the agent in Ivory Coast, that such and such request is there, do you want to perform this operation? If they say yes, then we connect that particular service provider to the service requester. So we are basically connecting a platform, creating a platform whereby people can get connected and perform their business. And historically, the shipping line has never been disrupted. All the models, like airline industry, we previously, if we want to travel, we used to go to the agent and we have a big book to get a ticket. Now we all do it in our mobile. We don't even print the ticket. We just take the mobile and show the counter, and we do the check-in automatically. But that is not the case when you want to do the supply chain, when you want to ship a container. If I want to ship my car from US to Dubai, then I don't know when it will come, because there are so many partners, so many parties involved in terms of that creates the disruption. That's where we have created a crates.com, where people can go and place an order, and then we provide the connected visibility to see where the particular container is. And if it is going via the ship, if you have the IoTs connected, then you can see where your car is. Then when it is landed in the port, then you can see for how long this is in the transshipment port. And then if you have connected IoT there, then it will show you all the way till your house. Yeah, same way if you are trying to bring some eatables, if you are trying to ship your avocado from Kenya, then if you have a right IoT devices, sensors assigned, then you can also identify what is nitrogen level. If you are trying to bring banana from Ecuador, then by the time it reaches, then I don't want to give too much ripe banana. So I will place it based upon the intelligence I have in the warehouse. Then I give the most ripe banana to the customer. So if I don't have the proper intelligence, I stack it in a way, then I create a problem to the customer, basically to the warehouse guy and to the shipper. Basically, I'm keeping my bananas in different locations, not able to give him the right banana pallet. Then if you have the sensors assigned, then you know how much it is ripe. And then you can give exact information to that guy, boss, this banana pack is going to be ripe in 4 days, do something. And if you don't have that intelligence, then you are lost. That's where you need to have the information from every step of the supply chain. If you have that information, as Baljeet said, then additional required is to analyze and make use of the data. As I mentioned in the previous slide, don't have the manual system, somebody come and do something. If it is connected, if you have parameterized set, then automatically the respective processes will trigger.
Thank you very much for that feedback, Mr. Ersa.
So going back to, sorry for divergence on the Digital Freight
No,
Alliance.
that was a very good example. I think it resonates with everybody, especially the bananas. Thank
Yeah.
you. It's great.
So for the Digital Freight Alliance is available for everyone who wants to be part of the network, and we are happy to have them as part of the network. It is a marketplace. Anybody who wants to have it, they can be part of that one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ersa.
Thank you.
Ladies and gents, we now move to the final stage of our presentation, which is the vote of thanks. And we've closed off all questions. There's no more questions in the question boxes. So on behalf of CLTSA, I would like to thank first and foremost the audience today. Without your presence, this event would not have been possible, and our presentation today. Our keynote speaker next, Mr. Mohammed Absa, thank you very much for your address and for those nuggets of knowledge you have shared with us today, including for the time that you have spent to prepare for the presentation and the hour that you have spent with us this afternoon in South African time. To our sponsors, Oracle, thank you very much, Baljeet, Naji, for your valued contribution to our event and for that excellent introduction to Mr. Absa. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Heartfelt thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Absa. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to the audience. Thank you. God bless.
Bye-bye.
To our strategic partners, the Transport Forum, for hosting this event today. And lastly, to CLTSA, members of the council and the national membership, thank you very much for all the hard work you guys have done behind the scenes. Once again, please remember to follow us on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, please remember to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook so that you do not miss out on future events. Thank you, everybody. Stay well.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.